I, 32F, have been married to Randy, 34M, for 6 years now. We have 2 beautiful children, Sierra, 5F, and Max, 3M. Our love story began in college, where we met during a charity fundraiser. Randy was the charming, outgoing guy everyone loved, while I was more reserved and focused on my studies. We balanced each other out perfectly, and after dating for 3 years, we tied the knot in a small ceremony surrounded by family and friends. From the beginning, I knew Randy came from a large, close-knit family. His parents, John, 60M, and Linda, 58F, raised Randy and his 3 siblings in a bustling household where the door was always open to extended family and friends. Randy often spoke fondly of his childhood, filled with family gatherings, impromptu barbecues, and cousins dropping by at all hours. My family background was quite different. As an only child raised by a single mother, I was used to a quieter home life. My mom, while loving, was often busy with work, so I learned to be independent from a young age. When Randy and I started dating, the warmth and liveliness of his family was both exciting and a bit overwhelming for me. After we got married, we bought a modest 3-bedroom house in the same neighborhood as Randy's parents. At first, I didn't mind their frequent visits. John and Linda were helpful when Sierra was born, often bringing home-cooked meals or offering to babysit so Randy and I could have a date night. I appreciated their support, especially since my own mother lived out of state and couldn't be around as much. However, as time went on, I started to feel like our house was becoming an extension of Randy's parents' home. They had a spare key for emergencies, which they began using more and more frequently. I'd wake up to find Linda in our kitchen, cooking breakfast, or John in our living room, watching TV. They'd drop by unannounced, sometimes multiple times a day. I tried to adapt, reminding myself that this was normal for Randy's family. But as our family grew with the birth of Max, I found myself craving more privacy and space to establish our own family routines and traditions. The situation reached a boiling point last month during Sierra's 5th birthday. I had planned a small celebration with just us, a few of Sierra's friends from kindergarten, and their parents. I spent weeks organizing games, baking a special cake, and decorating our backyard with Sierra's favorite princess theme. On the day of the party, just as our guests were arriving, I heard a commotion at the front door. To my shock, John and Linda had shown up with Randy's entire extended family, his siblings, their spouses, all the cousins, and even some family friends. Our carefully planned gathering for 10 ballooned into a chaotic party of over 30 people. I watched in dismay as Linda took over the kitchen, critiquing the snacks I'd prepared and whipping up her own dishes. John fired up our grill, inviting everyone to stay for an impromptu barbecue. Randy's siblings and their kids swarmed the backyard, disrupting the games I'd organized for Sierra and her friends. Sierra, overwhelmed by the sudden crowd, burst into tears and refused to come out of her room. I spent most of the party trying to comfort her while also attempting to salvage some semblance of the celebration I'd planned. Randy, on the other hand, seemed oblivious to my distress, happily chatting with his cousins and enjoying the impromptu family reunion. After everyone left, I confronted Randy. I told him how disrespectful it was to ambush me like that, especially on such an important day for Sierra. He got defensive, saying his parents were just trying to make Sierra's birthday special. We had a huge fight, with Randy accusing me of being ungrateful for his family's love and support. He ended up sleeping on the couch that night. Since then, the tension in our house has been unbearable. Randy's parents still come over all the time, and Randy refuses to set any boundaries with them. He says I'm being selfish and keeping his family away from our kids. But I feel like I'm losing my grip on my own home and family life. Last week, I reached my breaking point. I had a particularly stressful day at work, where I'm a middle school teacher. One of my students had a meltdown in class, and I spent hours after school in meetings with the principal and the students' parents. I was exhausted and looking forward to a quiet evening at home with my kids. Instead, I walked into what felt like a construction zone. Linda was in our living room, directing 2 delivery men who were bringing in new furniture. She had moved all our existing furniture to the garage and was in the process of hanging up new curtains. The kids were nowhere to be seen. When I asked Linda what was going on, she cheerfully explained that she thought our living room needed a woman's touch. She said Randy had given her permission to spruce things up a bit as an early anniversary gift to us. I was stunned. This was the room where Randy and I had spent countless evenings cuddling on the couch, where we'd watched Sierra take her first steps, where we'd built pillow forts with the kids on rainy days. Now it was being transformed without my input or consent. I lost it. All the pent-up frustration and resentment came pouring out. I told Linda to leave immediately and not come back unless invited. I said this was my home, not hers, and she had no right to make changes without my permission. Linda left in tears, and the delivery men awkwardly shuffled out, leaving half the new furniture in disarray. When Randy got home and saw the mess, he was livid. He accused me of disrespecting his mother and said I had no right to kick her out of our home. He couldn't understand why I was upset about the furniture, saying I should be grateful for such a generous gift. That night, as I lay awake listening to Randy snore on the couch again, I realized we had a serious problem. It wasn't just about the furniture or the birthday party. It was about respect, boundaries, and what it means to be a family. I love Randy, and I know he loves me. But his inability to set boundaries with his parents is tearing us apart. I feel like I'm constantly competing with his family for space in my own home and in my husband's priorities. I've suggested couples therapy, but Randy dismisses the idea, saying we don't need strangers interfering in our business. I've even brought up the possibility of moving to a different neighborhood, but Randy won't even consider it. He says his family connections are too important to him. I'm at a loss. I don't want to break up our family, but I also can't imagine spending the rest of my life with no privacy or personal space. The constant presence of Randy's family is suffocating me, and Randy's refusal to see my side of things is making me question our whole relationship. How can I make Randy understand that his family's behavior is not normal or healthy? Is there any way to salvage this situation, or am I fighting a losing battle? I need advice on how to handle this before it destroys our marriage and my sanity. Update 1. It's been about a month since my original post, and I want to thank everyone for their advice and support. Reading your comments made me realize that I wasn't overreacting and that I needed to take action to address this issue in my marriage. Following many of your suggestions, I decided to have another serious talk with Randy. I chose a moment when the kids were at school and we both had a day off work. I prepared for this conversation carefully, writing down my thoughts and practicing what I wanted to say. I started by telling Randy how much I loved him and our family. I reminded him of the early days of our relationship, how we used to dream about building our life together. Then, I calmly explained how his family's constant presence was affecting my mental health and our marriage. I used specific examples, like Sierra's birthday party and the living room redecoration incident. To my surprise, Randy seemed to listen more attentively than he had in the past. I think seeing how prepared I was made him realize how serious the situation had become. He admitted that he hadn't fully understood how much their presence was bothering me. He said he was used to having family around all the time and thought I would eventually adapt to it. After some discussion, we agreed on a compromise. His parents could visit twice a week, but they had to call first. No more unannounced visits or using the spare key unless it was a genuine emergency. Randy promised to talk to his parents and explain the new rules. For about a week, things improved. John and Linda respected our new boundaries, calling before visits and limiting their time in our home. I started to feel more comfortable and relaxed in my own space. Randy and I were getting along better, and I felt hopeful about our future. But then, everything fell apart. Last Sunday, I woke up to the smell of bacon frying. At first, I thought Randy was making breakfast, but when I went downstairs, I found Linda in our kitchen, cooking a big family breakfast. The house was full of Randy's family, his parents, his siblings, their kids, even some cousins I'd only met once or twice. When I confronted Randy, he sheepishly admitted that he had given his parents back the spare key. He said they had been upset about the new rules and he couldn't bear to see them sad about not being able to come over whenever they wanted. He accused me of trying to tear his family apart and said I was being selfish for not understanding how important family was to him. We had a massive fight right there in the kitchen, with his entire family as an audience. I told Randy that if he couldn't respect my need for privacy and personal space, then maybe we needed to separate. His family looked shocked and Randy stormed out, saying he needed some air. He ended up staying at his parents' house for a few days after that. During this time, I did a lot of thinking about our relationship and what I wanted for my future. I realized that this issue wasn't just about his family, it was about Randy's inability to put our nuclear family first. He was prioritizing his parents' feelings over mine, his wife's. When Randy finally came home, I told him I wanted to try marriage counseling. He was reluctant at first, saying we should be able to work things out on our own. But after another week of constant arguments and cold silences, he agreed to give it a try. Our first counseling session was a disaster. Randy spent the whole time defending his family's actions and accusing me of being cold and unfamily-oriented. He brought up my own family background, suggesting that I was jealous of his close-knit family because I didn't have that growing up. I felt attacked and misunderstood, and we left the session barely speaking to each other. The counselor suggested we try a trial separation to gain some perspective. Randy was against it at first, saying it would only make things worse. But after another week of tension and arguments, even in front of the kids, he reluctantly agreed it might be for the best. So now, I'm staying at my sister's place with Sierra and Max. Randy is at our house, and unsurprisingly, his parents are there all the time. It's been 2 weeks, and I have to admit, I feel more relaxed than I have in months. My sister has been incredibly supportive, and it's been nice to have some quiet family time with just me and the kids. Randy calls to talk to the kids every day, but he's still angry with me. He thinks I'm being dramatic and that I'll come to my senses soon. But the more time I spend away from that situation, the more I realize how toxic it had become. The kids are adjusting as well as can be expected. They miss their dad, but they've also mentioned how nice it is to have quiet time without grandma and grandpa always around. Sierra has been sleeping better, and Max's tantrums have decreased significantly. I'm not sure what the future holds for us. I love Randy, and I want our marriage to work, but I don't know if I can go back to living like we were before. The thought of returning to that chaotic environment makes me anxious. I have another counseling session scheduled for next week, this time, just for me. I'm hoping it will help me figure out what I want and how to move forward. Should I give Randy more time to understand my perspective? Is there a way to compromise that doesn't involve sacrificing my mental health and the well-being of our kids? Or is it time to consider a more permanent separation? I'll update again when I have more news. Thank you all for your support during this difficult time. Your words have been a source of strength and clarity when I needed it most. Update 2. It's been 2 months since my last update, and a lot has happened. I want to thank everyone again for their supportive comments and messages. Your words have been a source of strength during this challenging time. After several individual counseling sessions, I gained clarity on what I needed in my marriage and family life. I realized that the issue with Randy's family was a symptom of a larger problem, Randy's inability to set boundaries and prioritize our nuclear family. I also recognized my own part in the situation, how I had let things escalate by not communicating my feelings clearly from the beginning. With this new understanding, I decided to give our marriage one last chance. I asked Randy to meet me at a neutral location, a park near our house where we used to take Sierra when she was a baby. It was a place that held happy memories for us, and I hoped it would remind us of the family we had built together. I laid out my non-negotiables. His parents could visit once a week, with advance notice. No spare key. And most importantly, Randy needed to start putting our family first. I explained that I wasn't asking him to cut ties with his family, but to create a healthy balance that respected our need for privacy and our desire to create our own family traditions. To my surprise, Randy agreed. He said the separation had been hard on him, and he missed us terribly. He admitted that he had taken me for granted, and that his family's behavior was out of line. He talked about how he'd always seen his parents' constant presence as a sign of love, but he was beginning to understand how it could be overwhelming for someone not used to it. We started couples counseling again, this time with a new therapist who specialized in family dynamics. It was tough at first. Randy struggled to stand up to his parents, and there were several incidents where they tried to overstep. One particularly difficult moment was when Linda showed up unannounced on Sierra's first day of school, insisting she should be there to see her granddaughter off. Randy had to firmly tell her to leave, which led to a tearful confrontation. But slowly, things began to improve. Randy started setting clear boundaries with his family. He explained our new rules to them and, despite their initial resistance, stood his ground. It wasn't easy for him. I could see how torn he felt between his love for his parents and his commitment to our marriage. But he persevered. One day, about a month into our reconciliation, I came home to find Linda in our house again, uninvited. But before I could say anything, Randy stepped in. He firmly told his mother that she needed to leave and respect our boundaries. It was the first time I'd seen him stand up to her so clearly, and it gave me hope that real change was possible. Things have been slowly improving since then. Randy's parents aren't happy with the new arrangements, but they're starting to respect our space. We've had a few family dinners that actually felt pleasant and not overwhelming. Last weekend, we had a barbecue with Randy's siblings and their kids, and for the first time in a long time, I enjoyed having them over. Randy and I are still working on our communication and setting boundaries together. It's not perfect, we still have disagreements, and there are moments when old habits resurface. But we're both committed to making it work. The kids seem happier too. Sierra's nightmares have stopped, and she's doing better in school. Max is more outgoing and less clingy. They both told me they like having special time with Grandma and Grandpa now, instead of seeing them all the time. We're taking it day by day, but I'm cautiously optimistic about our future. Randy has shown real effort in changing, and I'm proud of the progress he's made. I know we still have a long way to go, but for the first time in a long time, I feel like we're a team again. I'll post another update if anything significant changes. Thank you all again for your support and advice. It truly made a difference in helping me navigate this difficult situation. Update 3. It's been 6 months since my last update, and I wanted to share some final thoughts on this journey. Life has settled into a new normal for us, and I'm happy to report that things have significantly improved. Randy has continued to uphold the boundaries we set with his family. There have been a few hiccups along the way, but he's handled them well. His parents now visit once a week for Sunday dinner, and it's actually become a pleasant tradition. They call before coming over, and they respect our privacy. The atmosphere during these visits is much more relaxed and enjoyable than it used to be. The most significant change has been in Randy himself. Through our continued counseling, he's realized how his inability to set boundaries wasn't just affecting me, but also our children and our marriage as a whole. He's been working on becoming more assertive, not just with his family, but in other aspects of his life too. Recently, he stood up to his boss about unreasonable overtime expectations, something he never would have done before. Last month, we faced a big test. Randy's younger sister, Amy, 29F, announced she was getting divorced and wanted to move in with us just for a few weeks. In the past, Randy would have immediately agreed, no questions asked. But this time, he consulted with me first. We had a long discussion about it, weighing Amy's needs against our family's stability and the progress we've made. Together, we decided that while we wanted to support Amy, having her move in wasn't the best solution. Instead, we offered to help her find her own apartment and provide emotional support through regular family dinners and outings with the kids. Randy was the one who called Amy to explain our decision. It wasn't an easy conversation, but he handled it with compassion and firmness. Randy's parents weren't happy about our decision. They argued that family should always come first and that we had plenty of room. But Randy stood his ground. He explained that while we love Amy and want to help, we needed to prioritize the stability of our own household, especially considering the rocky period we'd just overcome. I was so proud of him in that moment. Our relationship has grown stronger through this experience. We've learned to communicate better and to present a united front when dealing with family issues. We're making decisions together, considering each other's feelings and needs. It feels like we're true partners now, in a way we hadn't been before. The kids have noticed the change too. Sierra told me she likes that our house is calm now, and Max has been more relaxed overall. They still love spending time with their grandparents and extended family, but they seem to appreciate the balance we've struck. We're not perfect, and we still have disagreements, but now we handle them as a team. Just last week, we had a minor squabble about household chores, but instead of letting it escalate, we sat down and worked out a fair division of labor. It's these small moments that make me realize how far we've come. I feel respected and heard in my own home, which has made all the difference. Randy and I have been enjoying more quality time together, rekindling the connection that had been strained for so long. We've even started a new tradition of monthly date nights, with John and Linda babysitting the kids, on our terms. Looking back, I'm glad I didn't give up on our marriage. It took a lot of work, and there were times when I wasn't sure we'd make it, but Randy proved he was willing to change and prioritize our family. I've learned a lot about myself too, about communicating my needs clearly and standing up for what I believe is right for our family. I know now that it's possible to love your extended family while still maintaining healthy boundaries. It's not always easy, and it requires constant communication and adjustment, but it's worth it for the peace and happiness it brings to our home. To anyone going through a similar situation, I want to say, don't be afraid to stand up for yourself and your needs. A loving partner should be willing to work with you to create a home environment that makes you both comfortable. It might be a difficult journey, but with patience, communication, and a willingness to change, it's possible to find a balance that works for everyone. I won't be updating again, but I want you all to know that we're doing well and looking forward to our future together. Our home is now truly ours, filled with love, respect, and the right balance of family connections and personal space.